Hello, and welcome to my presentation of the digital running world, where I'll be talking about the different types of affinity spaces that I use for my passion of running. So let's go ahead and get started um, with. I'm going to do everything pretty much on the internet. So there are a bunch of affinity spaces that I'm going to be talking about, as you can see from all the tabs up top. The first one that I'm going to deal with is Strava, which is a big online platform for runners, for pretty much any individual who does a lot of fitness. But I know a lot of runners use a Strava, and so on here, this gives you the opportunity to just kind of like it's a Facebook of running. So it gives you that ability to post your runs after you get finished with them, and then here's a bunch of timelines of other people's runs and what they do. Here's a bike ride and things of that nature. So you can kind of share back and forth the feedback. You can encourage someone instead of giving likes, as on Facebook, you can give kudos. So just a thumbs up is a kudo. And this is a really good place where you can do a lot of training. You can do a lot of talking to individuals. Anytime that you run with someone, as I can show you for a second, anytime that you run with someone, let me see if it'll pull up. It'll, like right here, I ran with two other individuals during this run, and so it'll show that all of you were together running at the same pace and things of that nature. So it really adds a sense of community when it comes to all of the different runners that are on here. Everyone from novice up to professional uses Strava, so it's a good place to meet, compare, and then get better all at the exact same time. Another thing that I really like about Strava is that they have a bunch of different types of challenges that you can do. So you can go through the challenge tab. For me, I'd be a runner. Like I said, that it does running, it does biking, swimming, walking, hiking. All of these are different types of sports that you can get into and upload to Strava. As a runner, there are a bunch of different challenges that you can join. And then once you have surpassed or done what you wanted to in that challenge, at that point you will get a little digital badge like, hey, congratulations, you did it, which continues to um, motivate individuals on here. So this is what I really like about Strava, and the ability to do what you need to do here on Strava. Another one that I'm going to move, so we're going to move past Strava, and now we're going to be talking about Facebook. Facebook is another great place where a lot of individuals can come together and talk about whatever they need to talk about, and it's the exact same thing for running. So this is one of the groups that I am in right now, the Berlin Marathon 2022. I have never ran the Berlin Marathon, so I am a rookie when it comes to running this marathon, especially since it is overseas and whatnot. So one thing that I like about this, and that when we talk about affinity spaces, it allows that dialogue between a bunch of different people, right? So there are a lot of people in here who have ran the Berlin all the way up until its conception. Some people have run it a couple times, and there are people like me who have never run it. So there are a lot of questions that are being asked on here, like what hotels to stay at, what day should I arrive, are headphones allowed on here, the different type of nutrition in race that you can take. So there is just a lot of conversations about running. This one is a little bit specific, right, when it comes to the different type of the race that I want to run, but I know that there are a bunch of other groups out there that are a little bit more generalized, so talking about just running or running just a marathon or whatnot. But a lot of the groups that I subscribe to on Facebook are specific races that I want to run or that I have run in the past, because I think I find it a little bit more better informational wise than just doing a general, I want to run a marathon or I want to run a 10K, because but that's just for me. So that is another way in which I can connect with other individuals through some type of space, right? This one being Facebook, and more specific, a group or different groups in Facebook. The next way that I connect when it comes down to it are through podcasts. So not necessarily me going out and presenting individuals with the information that I have gained, but through other individuals doing that exact same thing for me and other runners. So here are two big running podcasts that I listen to a lot, whether it be Running Rogue or the Bibrate podcast. They pretty much do the exact same thing, but they obviously, since they are two different podcasts, they share information a little bit differently. And I've learned a lot from both of these podcasts. So clicking on the Running Rogue first, this one is based out of Austin, Texas. I currently live in Texas, but that means nothing. I would still listen to this even if I did not. And as you can go through the different types of titles, you can kind of read what's going on and what they discuss inside of these podcasts. So, this one being the do's and don'ts of running tech, talking about watches, talking about heart rate monitors, talking about headphones, all those things that go into running that you don't really think about, but some people really, really think about because it's a necessity for them. Since they are based out of Austin, they talked about the Austin Marathon and Half Marathon and the pace strategy, and they'll probably talk about elevation in there and the corrals or the starting positions. All of those things will be in there. And so I like that this podcast breaks it all the way down. They sometimes have guests, the exact same thing for the Bib Raid. Sometimes they have guests who come on and they say, hey, this is what I faced, and this is how I kind of worked past it, and so forth and so on. I've learned a lot when it comes to being a very salty sweater. And going in and making sure that I replenish that, I learned all of that from these podcasts and the individuals talking about it. Vegan and vegetarian, and so forth and so on. So both of these are great sources when it comes to running. The next one being not Facebook, but YouTube. YouTube is another place where you can get a lot of information, a lot of vlogs, a lot of blogging, a lot of talking to one another. And there are two different types of channels that I watch that I would recommend as an affinity space. One being Seth James Demore, who does a lot of content when it comes to running, whether it be training blocks or training for a specific race. And then he gets into his daily vlogs where he talks about different types of shoes, different types of runs, and so forth and so on. Kafuzi does the exact same thing. Right here, he's talking about the Chicago Marathon, and he talked about his training up until that point. I ran the Chicago Marathon in 2021, so I learned a little bit about the things that I should do, should not do, the course, and all of that nutrition wise. So that was a really great thing. He goes into doing shoes as well, and just motivation and everything of that nature, getting into technology. In this, he talks about recovery. Recovery is another big thing when it comes down to it, where they talk about foam rollers and they talk about massage guns and making sure you stretch. A big one, I think the most widely known would be Runner's World, where in Runner's World, it grabs the attention of a bunch of different types of runners. As you can see here on the side, you can be a beginner and you can go here and you can learn the foundation wise. You can be a little bit more advanced and learn things above that, right? Where now we're talking about cadence maybe, or how many times your foot hit the ground in a minute. Maybe talking a little bit about your heart rate and the levels in which you should keep your heart rate depending on the type of run that you do. So that's really great. They also have that ability to different types of running. So I mostly participate in road running, but in here, trail running is a big thing. We talk about track and field, so there are all different types of aspects. And then we get into injury and training and nutrition, shoes and gear. There is a race right here, race calendar where you can look at different races coming up. And so this is another one that's really good. I have a Runner's World subscription, and obviously there is a blog at the very bottom of here. Excuse me, let's see. There's a blog somewhere on here and a newsletter where you can also, excuse me, let me get myself together. A newsletter where they can throw different information at you at a time and things of that nature. So that's really nice. The last things that I'm going to be talking about are documentaries. So one of the big documentaries that I really love, that as a average runner, it motivated me a little bit, but I knew that I would never get to that point, is Breaking Two by Nike, where Eliud Kipchoge, this individual right here, was set to break a sub 2 hour marathon, which is, if you think about it, that is 13 miles per hour, a little bit over 13 miles per hour. And so they went through that whole situation, talking about it, putting all those components together to see if they could make history. Spoiler alert: if you have never seen it, or if you plan to see it, but it came out a couple years ago. But they did not succeed in breaking 2 hours. I think he got to like 2 hours and 5 seconds, or 2 hours and 10 seconds, or something of that nature. And so, in a different documentary, Eliab Kipchoge's documentary called "The Last Milestone," he goes through his point of view, and he eventually does break the sub 2 hour marathon. And so they talk about that and everything of that nature. And this was really a good documentary, just for motivation for the most part, and kind of understanding what all goes into running, because it's not just going out there and running, it's a little bit more. And then the last blog that I'm going to talk about is a blog that is near and dear to my heart, another big affinity space when it comes to sharing, when it comes to being able to take something from the blog and applying it to your day to day. The Running Shoe Guru is another big blog that really helps me when it comes to one of the most important aspects of running, the running shoes. So as you can see here, there are a bunch of reviews where they go through and they review and they score the different types of running shoes, whether it be racing shoes, spikes, stability. When we talk about trail, and there's even an option down here that you can't see, but there's a walking uh, shoe uh, tab as well. So it doesn't always need to be for those runners, it could be for those walkers as well. And it just goes in here and it says, hey, I really enjoyed this because of blank, or you probably should stay away from this if you have these problems, because those are the problems that I face with this shoe. So all of these affinity spaces are really big affinity spaces that I consume on a day-to-day basis, and I think that they are really good for my aspect of running. I hope that you learned something from this, can take an affinity space from here, or maybe not. But thank you so much for viewing my channel, and I hope you all have a great day.